The aroma of roasted turkey and tightly wound ambition hung heavy in the air at the annual Harrington Thanksgiving. For 5 years, since I, Maya Anderson, married into this family of relentless real estate developers, these gatherings felt less like heartfelt celebrations and more like strategic skirmishes, with me perpetually positioned as the outsider, still fiddling with that little online pet project, Maya. Tom Harrington, SR. My father-in-law boomed from the head of the ridiculously long dining table, his voice cutting through the polite murmur like a bulldozer through drywall. Thought our Jake had found someone with a bit more substance, real ambition. I carefully placed my wine glass down, feeling Jake's familiar, comforting squeeze on my knee beneath the crisp linen tablecloth. A small anchor in this sea of judgment. We were at their sprawling estate, overlooking a manicured lake in upstate New York, a place where every painting on the wall and every antique chair seemed to whisper judgments about your net worth and pedigree. Actually, Dad, Maya's business is doing incredibly well, Jake interjected, his voice tight, a familiar tension radiating from him. The Harringtons possessed an almost supernatural ability to make even their own children feel perpetually slightly off-kilter. Doing well, Cynthia Harrington, my mother-in-law, echoed, dabbing the corner of her impeccably lipsticked mouth with a monogrammed napkin. Her tone dripped with a saccharine condescension that was far more effective than any outright insult. How many adorable dog collars and artisanal catnip mice did you manage to move this month, dear? Enough to finally upgrade from that cozy, little lake house. A practiced, polite smile remained fixed on my face. Their words were like tiny, irritating gnats buzzing around my head, easily swatted away. If only they knew. What they so blithely dismissed as my internet hobby, pedal and pause, was merely the charming, customer-facing tip of a much larger, far more powerful iceberg. Nexus Solutions, the e-commerce logistics, fulfillment, and cutting-edge data analytics firm I had painstakingly built from the ground up over the past 5 years. We weren't just selling pet accessories, we were quietly powering the back-end operations, optimizing supply chains, and predicting consumer behavior for dozens of successful online retailers, including several multi-million-dollar operations they'd likely shopped at themselves. The business has actually grown significantly beyond direct-to-consumer sales. I explained evenly, my voice calm despite the internal simmer. We've pivoted heavily into B2B services, providing robust back-end infrastructure and data solutions for larger corporations looking to streamline their online operations. Tom SR let out a short, sharp laugh that was more snort than amusement. B2B, you mean selling software to other online trinket shops. That's not real business, Maya. Real business is tangible assets, bricks and mortar, things you can see, touch, and leverage, like Harrington Properties. He gestured expansively around the opulent dining room, as if the very walls were testament to his point. We build legacies, Maya. We build things that last. My mind drifted to the encrypted files on my secure cloud drive. The recent confidential discussions that had intensified into concrete proposals. Harrington Properties, for all its imposing physical presence and storied history, was a dinosaur lumbering towards extinction in the rapidly evolving digital landscape of real estate. Their traditional methods, their resistance to innovation, were costing them millions. They were circling my company now, their initial inquiries about consulting services quickly escalating into thinly veiled desires for acquisition, hoping to graft our advanced tech onto their crumbling infrastructure. They just didn't understand the scale of the organism they were trying to graft onto, or that the they envisioned acquiring was actually me. Speaking of real business and legacies, Cynthia purred, turning her attention to Jake, her eyes glinting with maternal pride and strategic calculation. Jake, darling, your father tells me the partnership review is moving forward. You're practically a shoo-in for partner next quarter. Finally, some significant and tangible progress in your career. Jake shifted uncomfortably beside me, his grip on my hand tightening slightly. He was proud of what I did, genuinely proud. He saw the relentless work, the sharp mind, the quiet determination that had built Nexus Solutions. He knew the truth, but he also lived under the crushing weight of his family's expectations, the decades of subtle and not-so-subtle pressure to fit their mold. "That's fantastic, honey," I said, turning to him, my voice warm and sincere. "I'm really happy for you." "Yes, well," Tom S.R. said, raising his wine glass again, his gaze lingering on Jake. "At least one of you is focused on the future of the family name. This whole online endeavor, it's just a fleeting distraction." I bit back a smile, a secret warmth spreading through me as I thought about the video call I'd had just last week with Mr. Davidson, the current CEO of Harrington Properties, a figurehead Tom S.R. tolerated but secretly disdained for not being aggressive enough. Davidson, a man whose usual demeanor was one of unflappable corporate calm, had been visibly sweating, practically pleading with me to accelerate our discussions about their acquisition offer, laying bare their alarming decline in market share and their catastrophic failure to adapt to digital real estate trends. "More wine, Maya?" Cynthia asked, her smile painted on, her eyes sharp. "You seem a bit flushed. All that time staring at a screen must be quite taxing." "No, thank you, Cynthia," I replied, my voice steady. "And I'm quite all right. I just have a rather important meeting first thing tomorrow morning." "Oh," Tom S.R.'s eyes narrowed, a flicker of something unreadable in them. "Another meeting about bulk orders of pet collars." "No, Dad," Jake said, his voice clear and firm this time, cutting through the tension. He squeezed my hand again, a silent signal. "It's a meeting with the board of directors of Harrington Properties." A stunned, absolute silence fell over the table. Silverware clattered to the floor. Thomas R.'s jaw went slack, his fork suspended midair. "What in the... Jake, what in God's name are you talking about?" "Maya's been asked to consult on the company's digital transformation strategy," Jake explained, a defiant pride entering his voice as he looked at me. "Given her extensive expertise in back-end logistics and data analytics." "Absolutely not," Tom S.R. roared, his face turning a dangerous shade of red. "Davidson wouldn't dare bring in some outsider from a trinket shop." "He already did, Tom," I said, my voice quiet, but carrying clearly through the silent room. The genuine smile I'd been holding back finally broke free, reaching my eyes. Tomorrow they would learn just how substantial, how real my business was. The board would never approve a consultant without proper credentials. Tom S.R. stammered, clutching the edge of the table. "The board did approve it, Tom," I corrected gently. "And they did so enthusiastically. In fact, Mr. Davidson personally requested my presence and allocated a significant portion of the meeting time to my presentation." Cynthia let out a shaky, disbelieving laugh. "Surely this is some kind of mistake, dear. No offense, but what could a small online retailer possibly offer a major financial institution?" I leaned back slightly in my chair, savoring the moment. "You'd be surprised, Cynthia, what running a high-volume e-commerce operation teaches you about market trends, consumer behavior, logistics optimization, and leveraging data for growth. For instance," I continued, my voice gaining a quiet power that held the room, "did you know that over 70% of all initial property inquiries now originate online? Or that traditional real estate firms like Harrington's are hemorrhaging potential leads and millions in revenue by failing to capture and analyze that digital traffic effectively. That's preposterous, Tom S.R. scoffed, but the fear in his eyes was a stark contradiction to his blustering tone. He knew, on some level, that I was right. Harrington Properties has been a pillar of this community for 50 years. We're not some fly-by-night startup. If he only knew. Nexus Solutions had processed more transactions, analyzed more complex market data, and optimized logistics for a higher volume of goods in the last fiscal quarter alone than Harrington Properties had managed in the past 3 years combined. Their acquisition offer wasn't an act of corporate strategy. It was a desperate plea for survival, disguised as a benevolent takeover. They thought they were the great white shark, circling a smaller fish. They had no idea they were the ones swimming into the jaws of something far larger, far more evolved. Times change, Tom, I said softly, the silence in the room now electric. The only question is, are you willing to change with them? Or will you let the tide of innovation leave you stranded? The remainder of the dinner was a tense, uncomfortable affair. The previous forced joviality shattered. As we made our excuses to leave, I saw Thomas R. pull Jake aside, his face a mask of furious intent. "You need to get your wife in line, Jake," he hissed, his voice barely a whisper but carrying a razor's edge. "It's bad enough she wastes her time with this internet nonsense, but now she's actively interfering with the company's future. Fix this, Jake. Make her back down. Or that partnership you've been working towards. Consider it gone." The drive back to our cozy lake house was initially silent, the tension from the dinner lingering in the air. But as we turned onto the familiar gravel road, the one the Harringtons always seemed to emphasize was quaint and modest, Jake suddenly burst out laughing, a genuine, unrestrained sound that filled the car. "Did you see Dad's face when you said the board meeting? I honestly thought he was going to have a stroke." I smiled, gripping the steering wheel, a thrill of anticipation mixed with a quiet satisfaction running through me. Just wait until he finds out who actually owns Nexus Solutions. "How much longer do we have to keep this a secret?" Jake asked, his voice filled with a mix of impatience and excitement as we pulled into our driveway. "About 9 hours, I said, glancing at the car's clock. "The meeting starts at 8 a.m. sharp." Jake shook his head, a look of disbelief and immense pride on his face in the dim porch light. 5 years. 5 years of their smug comments, their eye rolls, their thinly veiled pity for your little online shop. And tomorrow morning, they're going to find out that little online shop is actually the company that's about to swallow theirs whole and pull them back from the brink of irrelevance. Not just swallow, I corrected softly, stepping out of the car. Reshape, modernize. Bring them, kicking and screaming perhaps, into the 21st century. Harrington Properties isn't just outdated. They're weeks away from becoming functionally obsolete. They just don't have the data or the vision to see it yet. Back in my home office, a space filled with dual monitors, complex network diagrams pinned to the wall, and the quiet hum of servers, I unlocked the secure cabinet and pulled out the bound documents, not the preliminary acquisition offer from Harrington Properties, filled with clauses designed to minimize their payout and maximize their control, but the meticulously prepared, ironclad acquisition agreement, finalized by my legal team. The terms were definitive. Nexus Solutions would acquire a controlling interest in Harrington Properties. The legacy company would be restructured under Nexus's tech-forward leadership. Key executive positions would be reassigned based on merit and vision, not lineage. And the Harrington family? Their era of unquestioned control was about to end. My phone buzzed on the desk. An email from Carl Davidson. "Maya, all systems go for tomorrow. Full board confirmed. The presentation looks excellent. We're ready when you are. I ran my fingers over the embossed, minimalist logo on the cover of the acquisition agreement, the Nexus Solutions logo. Thank you, Tom, I whispered to the silent room, a genuine sense of gratitude in my voice. You taught me exactly how not to run a modern, forward-thinking company. Jake appeared in the doorway, 2 glasses of celebratory kombucha in hand, a nod to our less traditional, more health-conscious lifestyle. To tomorrow, he said, handing me a glass, his eyes shining. I took a sip, the tangy, effervescent liquid a refreshing contrast to the stuffy formality of the Harrington world. You know what's truly ironic? I mused aloud, looking out at the still, dark lake. If they had ever bothered to look beyond the surface of pedal and pause, if they'd looked at the seamless customer experience, the predictive inventory management, the real-time analytics dashboard, the global shipping logistics, they might have recognized the underlying engine, recognized Nexus Solutions. Jake asked, a slow grin spreading across his face. Exactly, I confirmed. They saw a pet shop. I was showing them, all along, the future of e-commerce and data-driven business, a future they desperately needed to embrace. But they were too busy looking down their noses to see the innovation sitting right across their dinner table. That's my family, Jake sighed, though without malice. So fixated on tradition and pedigree, they're blind to progress, even when it's staring them in the face. Outside, the lake remained still and quiet under the moonlight. But by tomorrow morning, that tranquility would be shattered. The hallowed halls of Harrington Properties were about to be hit by a wave of truth and transformation no one in the Harrington family saw coming. And Tom Harrington, SR, was about to learn, in the most undeniable way possible, that sometimes the most powerful forces in the world don't announce themselves with fanfare. They build quietly, persistently, underestimated, until they are too big to ignore. The next morning, the air in the Harrington Properties boardroom, thick with the scent of old money, polished wood, and a nervous energy, felt electric. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city come alive below, a vibrant, constantly changing organism that contrasted sharply with the static, historical portraits and heavy, uncomfortable chairs surrounding me. Board members filed in, their polite greetings tinged with curiosity and unease. Then came Tom SR. His usual confident stride faltering as he stopped dead in the doorway, his face clouding over as his eyes landed on me. What in God's name is she doing here? He demanded, his voice echoing in the suddenly silent room. This is a closed board session. Good morning, Tom, I said evenly, turning to face him, a calm, unshakable confidence settling over me. Mr. Davidson invited me. Davidson, he roared, whirling around to confront the company's CEO, who stood calmly near the presentation screen, arranging documents. Carl, explain this intrusion. Mr. Davidson didn't flinch. Actually, Mr. Harrington, Maya's presence is not an intrusion. It is essential. She is integral to the agenda today. Tom SR's jaw clenched, his face contorting in a silent battle between fury and disbelief. Before he could unleash another verbal volley, Cynthia hurried in, looking flustered and out of breath, still in her country club tennis whites. Tom, what's happening? You called saying it was urgent. She stopped abruptly as she saw me, her eyes widening in shock. What is she doing here? Everyone, please, take your seats, Mr. Davidson said, his tone firm and in command. We have critical matters to discuss regarding the future of Harrington Properties. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife, as Tom SR and Cynthia took their usual seats flanking the CEO, exchanging furtive, anxious glances. As many of you know, Mr. Davidson began, his voice projected clearly. Harrington Properties has been actively seeking ways to modernize our operations, and adapt to the rapidly changing digital real estate landscape. 3 months ago, recognizing the urgent need for technological integration, we entered into exploratory discussions regarding a potential acquisition of Nexus Solutions, a leading firm in e-commerce logistics, data analytics, and digital infrastructure. Tom, SR, visibly puffed up, leaning forward slightly. This was the part he'd been waiting for, the narrative he'd spun to justify his own foresight. This morning, Mr. Davidson continued, pausing for effect, I am pleased to announce that the acquisition has been approved and finalized. A ripple of polite, if slightly bewildered, applause went through the room. However, Mr. Davidson added, a subtle shift in his tone, there have been some adjustments to the initially discussed terms. Tom SR's head snapped up, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. Adjustments? What adjustments? The terms were agreed upon. Mr. Davidson turned and nodded towards me. Perhaps Maya would like to clarify the finalized terms. All eyes turned to me. I rose from my chair, the movement slow and deliberate, smoothing the fabric of my simple, elegant dress, a deliberate choice that stood in stark contrast to the power I was about to wield. 5 years ago, I began, my voice quiet but commanding attention in the silent room, I founded a company called Nexus Solutions. I went on to explain its evolution, its growth, its scale, its technological capabilities. Pedal and pause, I stated, meeting Tom SR's stunned gaze directly, was our initial beta test, our real-world laboratory. Every transaction, every customer interaction, every data point, it all fed into and refined the sophisticated algorithms and infrastructure that power Nexus Solutions today. We weren't just selling pet supplies. We were building the most advanced, agile, and data-driven logistics and e-commerce engine in the market. I clicked the remote in my hand. The large screen behind me, which had displayed the Harrington Properties logo just moments before, now blazed with vibrant charts, graphs, and real-time data feeds, showcasing Nexus Solutions' explosive growth, its vast network of partners, its billions in processed transactions. The numbers were irrefutable, undeniable proof of a scale and profitability that dwarfed Harrington Properties' performance from the last decade combined. Last year alone, I stated, my voice clear and strong, Nexus Solutions facilitated over $75 in global transactions and optimized supply chains for over 500 businesses. And effective today, I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Nexus Solutions is acquiring Harrington Properties. The silence that followed was absolute, deafening. Tom SR's face drained of all color, his jaw hanging open in disbelief. Cynthia looked like she might faint, clutching her husband's arm for support. That's not possible, Tom SR stammered, his voice barely a whisper. You sell dog toys. I built a future, Tom, I said, my voice steady and unwavering, while you were too busy dismissing my work to see the ground shifting beneath your feet. I nodded to Mr. Davidson, who, with a grimly determined expression, began distributing copies of the acquisition agreement to each stunned board member. Nexus Solutions, I reiterated, is not being acquired by Harrington Properties. We are acquiring you. Chaos erupted. Chairs scraped back, papers rustled frantically, voices rose in a disbelieving clamor. Cynthia looked genuinely ill, but Tom SR just sat there, staring at me, his eyes wide and unseeing, as if he were looking at a ghost. Mr. Davidson raised his voice above the noise. The terms, as you will see, are generous. Harrington Properties will retain its esteemed name and brand recognition, a legacy we respect. However, all operational and technological infrastructure will be fully integrated into Nexus Solutions' cutting-edge systems. Every current employee will retain their role, their expertise is valuable. However, there will be a necessary restructuring of executive leadership to align with Nexus Solutions' strategic vision. "This is an outrage," Tom SR finally roared, finding his voice, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. "The board would never approve such a ridiculous proposal." "We already have, Tom," stated Eleanor Vance, the sharpest and most respected voice on the board, her gaze unwavering. "We've reviewed Nexus Solutions' financials, their market position, their technological superiority. We've also reviewed Harrington Properties' declining performance metrics and projections. Tom, this isn't just an acquisition. It's an intervention, a necessary rescue." "A rescue?" Cynthia gasped, her voice high and incredulous. "Yes," I confirmed gently, my gaze still fixed on Tom SR. "Your systems are not just outdated, they are functionally obsolete, a decade behind the industry standard. You're hemorrhaging clients and revenue to competitors who embraced digital transformation years ago. Without this merger, without the infusion of Nexus's technology and strategic direction, Harrington Properties would likely be facing insolvency within the next 18 months. Tom SR crumpled slightly in his chair, the fight draining out of him like water from a sieve. He looked smaller, older. How could we not have known about Nexus, about you?" I looked at him, thinking of every dismissive comment, every patronizing smile, every holiday gathering spent feeling less than. "You did know, Tom," I said softly. "The information was right there. You just never bothered to truly look. Every time you mocked my little online shop, you were mocking the very engine that could have saved your legacy. You were too blinded by your own outdated definitions of success to see the future being built right under your nose." The next few hours passed in a blur of signatures, legal confirmations, and coordinating the press release that would send shockwaves through the financial and real estate worlds. By late afternoon, the news was everywhere. Tech innovator Nexus Solutions acquires real estate giant Harrington Properties in historic digital transformation deal. From e-commerce upstart to real estate powerhouse, Nexus Solutions' bold move. Underestimated entrepreneur rises to acquire husband's family's company. Jake found me in my new office that evening. It had been Tom SR's corner office, but now it felt different, cleansed. The heavy, dark furniture had been replaced with sleek, modern pieces, the ancestral portraits replaced with vibrant, abstract art. He leaned against the doorframe, a wide, uncontainable grin on his face. "Just got off the phone with Mom," he reported, shaking his head in amusement. "She's blaming the whole thing on a bad batch of hors d'oeuvres at Thanksgiving. Says the acquisition papers must have been contaminated." He chuckled. "And Dad's already spinning it to the press, calling it a brilliant, strategic pivot he'd been planning for years." I laughed, walking over to stand beside him, looking out at the city lights that now felt, in a strange way, like mine. "How long until they realize the full extent of the changes?" "Probably," Jake mused, wrapping an arm around my waist. "Around the same time, they realize my promotion isn't just to partner at Harrington, but to head of global strategy and integration for Nexus Solutions." My phone, which I'd finally turned back on, was a chaotic symphony of notifications, emails, texts, missed calls, journalists, investors, potential partners, old classmates. The story was too good to ignore. The quiet, underestimated wife who secretly built a tech empire and then used it to acquire the very family business that had dismissed her. A few days later, the inevitable call from Cynthia came, her voice a tight, barely suppressed shriek of fury. Her country club membership account had been frozen. Turns out, their payment processing system was handled by a subsidiary of a smaller tech firm Nexus had acquired months ago. a move that had gone completely unnoticed by the Harringtons. "I can't access anything," she wailed. "Don't worry, Cynthia," I said, my voice dripping with polite concern. "We're integrating all our systems. We'll get you set up with a new digital payment portal. I hear Nexus Solutions offers excellent, seamless customer support." Over the next year, Harrington Properties was fundamentally transformed. We honored its heritage, its recognized name, its long-standing relationships, but we rebuilt it from the ground up, infusing it with Nexus's technology and data-driven approach. Paper files became secure digital archives. Outdated branch offices were reimagined as modern, tech-enabled client hubs. The company that had once sneered at online business became a global leader in digital real estate transactions and smart property management. Tom SR and Cynthia slowly, grudgingly, adapted to the new reality. Family dinners became less frequent, and the condescending career advice evaporated entirely. They still attended some events, but there was a new deference in their demeanor towards me. As for Pedal and Pause, I kept it running. It remained my personal testing ground, a beloved connection to where it all began. And yes, someone still needed to sell those artisanal dog collars. Jake thrived in his new role, his sharp mind finally unleashed from the constraints of Harrington tradition. He earned his place on the Nexus Solutions executive team based on merit, not just his last name. Sometimes, when I'm in my office, I catch Tom SR. Across the hall, looking out his window at the city skyline, his gaze often drawn to the illuminated Nexus Solutions logo, now shining proudly atop the building that once bore only the Harrington name. I think he's still trying to understand how he missed it, how the future he couldn't see was built quietly, patiently, by the person he consistently underestimated, the person who ultimately didn't just prove him wrong, but ended up saving his legacy from itself. My office, filled with both pieces of Harrington history and symbols of Nexus innovation, is a constant reminder that true power doesn't always announce itself with a bang. Sometimes it simply builds piece by piece in the quiet moments when no one is watching, until it's undeniably, irrevocably present.